Good morning. Welcome to the Frank and Jill Show. Frank Cusimano, Jill Farmer, Connor McCarthy, Royal Banks of Missouri text line 84126. You can watch us on YouTube TV. Great guest list today. Mark Maxwell on the Sheriff Alfred Montgomery's saga. How about Square One Bakery? It's John Whitty coming in. Jill, you frequent that place, the end of a bar, a couple of drinks every night, correct?
Yeah, so every night, yeah. No, Square One Brewery and Distillery, very interesting history, some delicious food, and I think it's going to be a fun conversation.
Very excited, 11:35, Professor Greg Willard, who a great constitutional lawyer, but he also has that political savvy after serving in the Ford administration, so much to talk about politics-wise. And then Ryan Raphael, and Ryan has a request for today.
Yeah, so today, if you, right now, he'll be on a little bit later in the second hour, but you have a chance now through the rest of the show, if you have any questions related to Medicare at all, just text them into the Royal Banks of Missouri text line 84126, and we will get to as many of your questions as we can. If you're wondering, is it worth it to pay for one of the Medigap plans versus just paying the 20% that Medicare doesn't cover it? How do I know how to make that decision? All those questions that you may have as relates to Medicare, he will answer them all. Just get them in sooner than later so we can ask as many of them on the air as we have time for.
All right, because we care about the audience, we're giving away 2 sets of 2 Cardinal tickets. And these aren't just Cardinal tickets. These are really good Cardinal tickets. Section 135. So we're going to ask 2 trivia questions. We'll go one at a time. But the first one who texts in on what was the original name of the St. Louis Cardinals, text us right away, 84126, and you've won the first set of 2 tickets, Section 135. And on that subject, I just got the most thoughtful thank you note from this gentleman who we gave away the Bomarito automotive tickets to, and he said he had a spectacular time at the race, the speed, the sound, the people. He just absolutely loved it, and I'm so impressed that he wrote a handwritten thank you note, which we've been discussing all week long. The handwriting is magnificent, so we appreciate that nice note.
I have to say, I got a really thoughtful text from a young man yesterday who I had helped out professionally with some coaching support and in between point in his life. And it was not a handwritten note, but the fact that he took a decent amount of time to give a very specific feedback around something that had been helpful and made a difference, I'll never forget it. I'm going to save it. It was something that was really important. So no matter how you show some gratitude to somebody today, I think it's a good, you made a call to action yesterday that I think is good for all of us to think about doing.
And we have a winner. We got a lot of response. Boy, people are looking for free tickets today. St. Louis Brown Stockings is the winner. Connor, you take care of them. And
well, I was wondering what you would consider the right answer.
Yeah.
Because that was technically a different team.
But
they do kind of merge them together. But it was a different team.
That's in online, they go with that, the official name. So St. Louis Brown Stockings is the winner, and it's a 314 winner, and we'll tell you how you can pick them up. Are you going to respond to them?
I will get in touch with them, and we'll go from there.
All right, and we'll wait 20 minutes for our second trivia question of the day.
Yeah, stick around for that, though. A lot of people willing to brave the heat to see the Cards get back on track is how I'm going to say that with a win, hopefully, today.
Yeah. Let's see. So what's been going on in the last 24 hours? I put Monique on a plane. She's gone to visit her mother, and it's kind of, as much as I love her, it's kind of interesting to come home and the whole place to myself, just Reg and I. Don't worry about dishes. Don't worry about picking anything up. Bought some red meat.
Yeah, let's walk through I think I find it always intriguing. I'm sure many of our listeners do as well. Your exact menu plans for, let's say, the next 48 to 72 hours while you are batching it, so to speak.
Well, she did leave, to her credit, a lot of homemade great tuna salad, which would be good for lunches. But I bought about 3 steaks, go to Bartolino's one night, probably get some more steaks, just red meat out. Really excited.
Because you got that prescription last week from Dr. Rick
right.
that as people are aging and getting near 65 and above, that a little red meat delivers some much needed vitamins and protein in this season of life. I don't think I've seen you that happy in a long time, is when he said that was
Yeah.
a good thing to do.
Love her to death, but there's something to be said for kind of bacheloring it up for a while.
Okay.
Just Reg and myself, and there's like shows that she won't watch that I'm probably going to get into. And like she didn't want to watch Stick, I don't think, the golf one. I'll tell you, I watched well, I'll get into it in the opening dialogue, but there's a couple series out there. They're pretty cool.
So the thing that I've noticed, I'm just going to reflect back after as an outside observer on a few of these Monique is out of town trips now in the many months that we've been working together. There's a lot of excitement initially, and it does definitely fade as the days go on. You're not really conceding that at this point, but I've observed that's what happens. By the time she comes back, you're pretty darn glad she returns again. I just have to name that pattern as I've observed it.
I may break out the old black book. The black book to call guys, hey, you want to golf with me?
Exactly. Will you go eat a little more Italian with me tonight? Because all the other guys said
Let's
they're
have
tired
some
of
wings.
me. It won't get old fast, I'm quite sure. No, I enjoy your time. I'm quite sure she's might be saying the same thing. Woohoo!
I don't know. I think she's probably in tears. Where is he? I miss waking up with him. Oh my gosh. No, absolutely. That statement has never been made. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back with the opening dialogue on the Frank and Jill Show. What a guest list with Maxwell, Willard, Square One Brewery, and Ryan Raphael. We'll be right back. All right, our next trivia question to win 2 seats for Section 135. What organization did John Mozeliak begin his career with as a batting practice pitcher? Okay, thought one. Not a political thought, but a thought about politics. You know what's the most important trait of a politician or the characteristic that leads to his or her success? One word, authentic. In my mind, authenticity will lead to the person's success even more than character or intelligence. And I'm not saying it should, but I think it does. I say this because on Thursday morning, I listened to this long podcast with Joe Rogan and Bernie Sanders. And Bernie Sanders is successful. Look at the crowds he draws. Look at how many years he served our country. I likely don't agree with many of the things that Bernie Sanders says, but I couldn't turn it off because he is who he is, and he's not afraid to let people really know him. And oh, by the way, his command of facts and memory, really good for an average person and off the charts for an 83-year-old. But think about this for a second. And again, not a political thought about why politicians are really popular and the authenticity angle. Don't you think when you're watching, say, Senator Fetterman, that's who he is, and he is popular? Donald Trump, like him or hate him, just got 77 million votes. And believe me, it's his authenticity, which was on display the other day when he described the friction between Iran and Israel by saying they don't know what the blank they're doing. AOC, pretty authentic. Elizabeth, I'm going to get myself a beer. Warren, maybe not. Or maybe that was just an isolated, inauthentic moment. Anyway, Bernie is who he is. He is popular because of his authenticity. And oh, by the way, I love the voice, although I think I'm listening to Larry David sometimes. But I love Bernie Sanders just being himself. Okay.
Good job making the Larry David reference because it just was too good. And Saturday Night Live did a very good job of playing up that when he was running for president. So many of you may have seen the news. If you haven't, it was a big deal yesterday. Monster.com and Career Builder, its a partner company, filed for bankruptcy yesterday. Of course, they were the original major players in the online job search world. They've been pioneers. Recent years just haven't been able to compete with LinkedIn or Indeed.com. But we have to give them credit for this. They completely changed the way people applied for jobs. And if you're over the age of 40 and it's been a minute since you applied for a job, you may not realize it's common for recent college graduates to put in upwards of 200 job applications for open positions. Oftentimes, they never hear back from any employers. You won't if you apply for a job. That's a big change from previous times when you get confirmation your resume had been received and then a short courtesy letter if that position was filled eventually. Those days are gone. That hardly ever happens. Even people who make it into a final round of interviews sometimes report not hearing back from an employer once they have hired someone else. It's a different day and age when it comes to the job application process. The upside of moving the job search process to a more technologically advanced digital process is now you're no longer limited by geography to see a job posting on a board somewhere, hear about it from a friend working at the company exclusively, or finding out by going to a job fair in your area. You can hop online, see a posting from across the country, apply electronically, and put yourself in the running for something literally anywhere in the world for a matter of minutes. The downside, that means that sometimes there are thousands of applicants for one position, which can make it hard to narrow it down. And for people who haven't had the experience or trained on how to compete and use things like keywords in their resumes to apply for new jobs, it can be an overwhelming and often disappointing and disheartening process. I just find, because I do this in my other work a lot, that people who haven't been in the job search process recently are pretty overwhelmed by how drastically it's changed in the last 20 years.
But I love the stat. For a college grad, 200.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So parents will get disheartened. They'll say, oh, my kid's applied for 15 or 20 jobs and hasn't heard anything. I'm not trying to deliver bad news, but I have to say, if you look at statistically how many jobs you need to apply for, that needs to increase by almost tenfold to be competitive. That's just how things are in this day and age.
Well, I could fill this whole back wall with rejection letters trying to get a job with a crappy resume tape from Channel 5 when I was an intern.
Yeah, don't you remember though that you'd get the rejection letter, so you didn't keep hope alive or just wonder forever. Some of them would be pretty direct. You're not ready for prime time yet. I got a couple of those.
Oh, that was polite. Mine is, you suck. One time I sent out 25 tapes once in a gift-wrapped black box with a red bow on it to the news director. And the opening line was, "You're getting the best gift you could possibly get, a sportscaster with creativity." So everybody opens up, because look, a lot of news directors don't even look at tapes. Everybody opens up a gift, and then they look at the tape and they're really disappointed. All right, thought two.
I like the idea, though.
So I spent the day interviewing the Johns, John Mozeliak and John Gruden. The interviews will be a part of a star-studded Sports Plus Sunday night at 10:30 on 5 on your side. A few thoughts. John Mozeliak is 56, relatively young man. I think in the end, he will do the logical thing. He's made a ton of money. He loves living in Ladue, and I think he'll keep a spot in the organization and kick back. But he has a son, Will, 6'4", rising junior at Villanova. He has the baseball bug. He's working in analytics at the Cape Cod League, which is the top summer league for college baseball players. Now, Jill, a father will sometimes do things they don't want to do to help their child's future. I think, again, he'll stay in the organization, and I'm sure he could play a role in Will getting some kind of job in the Cardinal organization if he remains, maybe even if he doesn't. But what if a team says to John Mozeliak, another team, "Hey, come run our baseball operations"? And he does have the resume to get another job. It's not that far-fetched, contrary to what many fans think in the area. One losing season in almost 2 decades, that's a hell of a run. So if I had a child who, say, wanted to get into TV, first I would feel like I failed as a dad. But the stipulation is, hey, if I stay in this thing and work till I'm 75, but by doing that, that will help my flesh and blood in his or her career, TV goals, I would do it in a heartbeat. I would work till the end, till I die, just to help that, son or daughter. So I'm just wondering with Mo, and we talked about it, and we'll talk about it on TV Sunday, but the things you would do for your kid, and I'm no different. I'm an average father, but I think every mother or father would do things like that.
When we watch on Sunday night, will we get a hint as to whether that's something that's something that he is considered, or that he is a factor in how long he'll keep doing this in some form?
Well, we do talk about his immediate future, and we talk about Will getting the bug, so we'll get into it.
And does he indicate that you think he's going to keep roots pretty deep here in St. Louis?
I think it's pretty tough to leave Ladue.
Okay, good.
Yeah. And I think that the way the DeWitts view him almost as a son or a brother, I think there's going to be work for him.
I love hearing that, because I just had another friend our age who is the spouse is able to work remotely in finance, and they've just made the decision to go to Florida. And it seems to be more and more people doing that.
Wait a minute, you're saying getting out?
Leaving St. Louis, who live in Ladue and had a very good life here. And so I like the idea of people kind of keeping at least some percentage of their time here as well. But we'll see. Everybody gets to make their own decision as it pertains to that. Interesting story in the Business Journal that pet insurance has become more and more popular with the younger generation, and many say in a job search process, if their employer offers pet insurance, it's a key determinant for whether they take a job or not. In some cases, even more important than their own personal insurance. It's a practical perk for employers because there's more options now for employer-provided pet insurance than others. We don't happen to have it here at KTRS, but apparently a lot of companies are now adding it to the benefit list. They say that employees tend to like it. Coverage for things like pet insurance has gotten more widespread. It's still not cheap, but pet care, as it relates to veterinary care, is getting more expensive all the time.
Right.
And all you have to get is, one of those really expensive bills after Fido decides to, chew a washcloth, or all the other things that I've had friends that have required emergency surgery that their dogs or cats have gotten involved in. You have Goose now at your house, Connor. Do you have pet insurance, or do you just pay it out of pocket?
I do not have pet insurance, but I don't know if I should. I don't know.
How much will it pay for?
I think it depends, right? It depends on, like all insurance, depends on what you're what type you end up buying.
But I think I finally got it because we have 2 pets again, and the last time we had 2 pets, I didn't, and we got hit with some really big bills, and so it does take a chunk out of those kind of things.
Like how
and,
big a bill? For,
a
and
couple
how,
$1,000s.
and how old was the dog?
That was when Ruby was getting up there. She would have been 10, 11, 12 years old.
And you paid the $2,000.
Yep, we did. Not, it was.
I've heard families discuss that if the dog is like 12, and the bill from the Columbia, Missouri hospital, if I had this surgery, would be $3,000. You know,
those are hard decisions. In our case, it was stuff that was not age related. It was, he'd ingested some kind of a poison at some point, or something like that, as beagles are inclined to do. Yeah, but it's a tough decision. I mean, we are paying for pet insurance now. We'll see. We'll have to wait after a year to see if the juice is worth the squeeze on that. But I had really never heard of it until the Business Journal reported on it, that it was something that employers are providing as a perk option for employees.
And I notice I have Progressive, and I noticed they send me emails like, do you want to bundle in pet insurance? And I was like, oh, well, maybe, but I don't know how much it would be.
And that feels newish as well.
Yeah, it's new, kind of new products, yeah.
I bet we'd get a lot of text on that age thing with the dog, 84126. Do you spend the $2,000 with a dog that maybe has another year to live? I guess, if the dog is like 6 or 7, it's not even a debate for me. I remember Jack at the end, Jackson. That was a tough call. All right, thought 3. What a miserable night in St. Louis sports. Cardinals annihilated 8-0. City is down 3-0 before you could eat your first pork steak at Beastcraft. And with the Cardinals winning today, though, it would be 3 out of 4, and you'd be 2.5 out. So there's still hope for the Cardinals to have a really, really good series. The Waterfront TV series is off to a great start. A very good episode 1. Finished it last night. I think it's got a chance to be quite good. Last night, NBA draft, I think the really cool thing was to see the mom's role in some of the developments of their son. And I'm not just talking about character, but actually on the court. Cooper Flagg's mom, Kelly, recounted a one-on-one game, and she had beaten Cooper every game they ever played. She was a good player. She was trailing in this game like 9-8, and she was going to tie the game. She was taking him to the whole little crossover move, and then she tore her knee on the move.
Tore the meniscus.
And she said the game doesn't count because she was injured, so she retires undefeated against her son Cooper. But the mom's playing such a cool role. Was a great night of NBA draft coverage.
But he has talked about it. He talked about it on the Today Show yesterday, and he definitely counts it and said his story is that he beat his mom as a 7-year-old or whatever, and so they have an ongoing.
I'm going with the mom.
I think I would on that as well. And speaking of which, Connor, you got to tell the story about the home run not being counted that we were talking about off air, because I think that's a really interesting. Does it count or does it count on Benji Molina?
Okay, yeah, a little statistical thing I saw yesterday. I forget the year it was. Benji Molina was playing for the Giants. He hit a home run out to right field, but they weren't sure if it went out or not. So he runs to first base because he's Benji Molina, kind of a slow runner. And while the umpires are kind of talking amongst themselves and going in to review it, whether or not it was a home run, they pinch run for Benji. He runs off the field. Per the rules, you can't come back out onto the field. So they'd already pinch run him. When the umpires come back out, give it as a home run, the pinch runner runs around the base and touches home plate. MLB's ruling is that pinch runner scored the run, not Benji. So Benji, as far as I'm aware, hit the only home run where he didn't score a run for the home run that he hit in MLB history.
An unbelievable story.
Yeah, super interesting.
By the way, we have a winner. John Mozeliak began his career throwing BP for the Colorado Rockies.
Really?
So,
When did he leave the Rockies?
it was his first job.
It was like right away? Did he come here right after that, or did he go somewhere else?
He came eventually from the Rockies to the Cardinals when Walt Jocketty hired him.
Yeah.
But so we've given away 2 sets of 2, Section 135. Thank you, Mark, for making that happen.
Yeah, that's great. There was something I caught just quickly on the news the other day, a Starbucks barista competition where they had, it was a serious like game show style competition between the top Starbucks baristas around the country. As somebody who occasionally forgets to put on matching shoes before I leave the house, the number of variations of complicated coffee drinks that a barista at Starbucks deliver with precision and speed, a little overwhelming. Simply put, I don't think I could keep track of it all if I had that job. Regular listeners won't be surprised to hear me say that, considering the number of gaffes and things I have a hard time recalling on a daily basis. But it reminds me of one of the owners and chief cooks down at Chili Mac Diner downtown. Lovely woman, always impeccable with her blonde hair and an updo. She and her waitress sister can remember long and complicated breakfast and lunch orders, several of them, with variations on eggs and toast and all the different ways breakfast can be put together without writing them down. And semi or regular semi customers like my husband can walk in the front door already cracking the eggs to make it his favorite way before he even orders. It's a marvel to behold. In your world, Frank, you probably know people who can keep track of sports stats like their encyclopedias. You do a very good job at remembering players past and present, win-loss records of teams from years past that would never stick in my brain. Who else do you guys know in your life that's really good at keeping track of stuff that maybe slips through your brain like a sieve? I'd love to hear it from you. Royal Banks of Missouri text line 84126.
Yeah, I remember obscure, unimportant things, starting lineups from NBA teams from the 70s and stuff.
But even new players, you do a very good job of recalling their names, even though they haven't been there for a while. I have to work hard at stuff like that. Like when people are elected to positions, it'll take me a minute to learn the name without having a cheat sheet in front of me.
Yeah, but what a ridiculous, I wouldn't call it a skill, but trait I have to, it means absolutely nothing. It's not going to get me to heaven or anything like that. It's just
But do you have, are things that are hard for you to remember?
Yeah, oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. But like these obscure sports things that mean nothing.
Yeah, I think we all kind of have our area of specialty, and certainly Jeff Zufall does, our friend at Capital Advisory Group. When it comes to tax law, he will know more than any in his tiny little pinky than we will know our entire life, because he is just really focused on making sure that he understands tax-informed wealth planning. And that means that he says it's really the most important part of wealth planning that is often overlooked because many wealth managers don't have the tax experience, don't have the know-how, don't keep up with changing tax laws in a way that can help you maximize your retirement nest egg. And that's what Jeff and his team do so well. He is so passionate about understanding tax and how it relates to your ability to grow wealth. He even wrote a book on the subject, turned out to be a bestseller, called Keep What's Yours. It's the show he does every Saturday here on KTRS, the Big 550, along with Josh Gilbert. And it is a wealth of information, interesting and fun to listen to every single week. If you are finally tired of saying, I've been trying to figure this out on my own, and it's just gotten too complicated thanks to changes in the laws, changes in the markets, all the things, now is the time to reach out to Jeff and his team. Capital Advisory, grp.com, 636-394-5524. That's Capital Advisory Group.
All right, welcome back. Frank and Jill Show. We're here till 12. The great Greg Willard coming up at 11:35. Mark Maxwell joins us now from 5 on your side. Man, have you had a lot of interesting things to cover? This Andrew Bailey filing a lawsuit to remove the city sheriff, Alfred Montgomery. How would you sum up this saga in about 20 seconds?
Well, it's not hard to sell newspapers in this town, that's for sure. You remember Kim Gardner when Andrew Bailey came after her and said, "I'm going to kick you out of office. You have until high noon tomorrow to resign, or I'm going to force you out." She said, "I will not resign." We saw the same exact thing, deja vu. Andrew Bailey giving Alfred Montgomery until high noon yesterday to resign. Montgomery came out and said, "I won't do it. I'm staying here. You're going to have to remove me." And so now we go to court.
So behind the scenes, Mark, I know that he had that Alfred Montgomery had some support of some current alder persons when he decided to run against Vernon Betts. And we heard from at least one of them when you were filling in here on the air saying, the guy just needs to understand politics better. We got to give him a shot to get things straightened out. He's had some missteps here, but he's going to end up doing a good job. It doesn't appear that he seems to learn from his mistakes. He seems to double down again. Are you hearing the same support behind the scenes from people as we heard a few weeks ago?
Oh, support has eroded rapidly. The guy's been in office 6 months. He's got 6 charges against him now from the Attorney General. Each of them is a charge serious enough, the Attorney General argues, to expel him from office. One of them is kind of a mystery. We'll get to that in a minute. But to the support, look, the sheriff of the city of St. Louis is not like a sheriff in most places where they go around arresting people and enforcing criminal law. They really just protect the courts, process your concealed carry permits, carry out the auctions of, tax sale properties. And that's really about it. Oh, and then transport inmates to and from their doctor's visits when they're in the city jail. That's it. So a sheriff should be like a referee in a baseball game. You only notice them when they're doing a bad job. And we've been noticing a lot of Alfred Montgomery.
You know, Mark, anytime you have these controversial characters like a Kim Gardner or a Sheriff Alfred Montgomery, there is a contingent that kind of backs them to the end. But with Montgomery, who seemingly has done everything wrong, is there a faction, hey, we got to keep him, we need him?
You do hear some of that, but I don't think that they're really supporting him for him. I think really they're opposing Andrew Bailey. I think there is a certain contingent in the city of St. Louis that says, hey, we didn't vote for you, the Attorney General. They may not like his politics. Keep your nose out of our stuff. We'll fix it. It's the state versus the city dynamic. But that's really more where that's coming from. It's like, yeah, these are our problems, but there are problems. It's not up to you, the Attorney General, to stick your nose in it. Let us fix it. I think that's where most of the sentiment that I'm hearing is rooted in.
Yeah, and I think that's the initial report that we're seeing from Attorney General Bailey. It seems to indicate that there's things that were questionable, but also some plain good old-fashioned wrongdoing under the Missouri statute. Nepotism is one of those things that it's pretty clear cut. You can be removed from office, and it looks like there was a half-brother who was appointed as deputy underneath his leadership here. Do you think that's going to end up being the real nail in the coffin here?
Well, the Constitution is clear cut. If you hire your family for a job like that, you're out. The facts on the ground are not clear cut. The Attorney General is claiming a senior deputy that Montgomery hired is his half-brother. They share the same father. He says so in his court filing. He even says that Montgomery has directed people to cover that up, to keep that fact secret. But when we reach out to the Montgomery people, his lawyer, the sheriff himself, they're like, no, this person's not related to me. I don't know what they're talking about. So someone either doesn't have their facts right, doesn't have the whole story, or someone's lying. It's really messy. This is not the type of story that, we in the media wouldn't publish something like this without having our facts lined up. If the Attorney General published it without having his facts lined up, we're going to find out in court, right? I mean, they either have the evidence or they don't. And right now, we're just kind of in this uncomfortable middle zone where we don't actually know what's true here. Both sides are saying the other is wrong.
Well, even worse than the nepotism was the one where Bailey listed 59 times when the sheriff's office failed to take inmates in for medical treatment when needed.
and kind of jeering him too. They even went into his TikTok page, the sheriff's TikTok page, where they said a few hours after refusing to transport one sick detainee to or from a medical visit from the jail, he had posted a video to TikTok showing himself skydiving, and they actually include the photo, a screenshot of the skydiving incident in the court filing. I've never really seen that before. It felt sort of like poking him in the eye, like a political move there. But behind all this is actually a very complex legal dispute. Whose jurisdiction is it when a sick patient leaves the jail to go to a doctor's office? The sheriff's office historically has done so, but they've done so not by the direction of state law, but under an agreement with a contract or memorandum of understanding between the city jail and the sheriff. When that handoff happens, there's important custody that needs to be documented there. And basically the sheriff has said, we don't have enough money to keep doing this. You, the city, need to give us more money for us to keep doing this. And so in that budget negotiation, he said, fine, we're just not going to do it anymore until you give us the money. You have to realize this is an important thing, and we take on a lot of liability. I think some judges, I don't want to get out in front of this, but I think some judges might be uncomfortable getting in the middle of a budget dispute and using that, maybe ill-conceived tactic as justification to expel someone from office. That's a serious charge. And there's a lot of court precedent under this very question. And the Attorney General knows that. So, refusing to take inmates, sure, maybe he should have kept doing it until they sorted out the budget. But I don't know that a judge will see that as rising to the level of willful negligence. Maybe they will.
Yeah, it's going to be something that we'll probably be paying attention to for a while. Of course, Andrew Bailey is a statewide official, and this is a situation involving somebody who is employed by the city of St. Louis. What has the mayor's office said about his performance so far, and what they think about Attorney General Bailey's actions yesterday?
I don't know that I've heard the mayor comment. Maybe she has to other media outlets in the last 24 hours. But we know that going into this last week, she was very displeased, very unhappy with Alfred Montgomery. I mean, a lot of Alfred Montgomery's supporters, those who endorsed him, even former Mayor Tashara Jones, before she left office, she referred the guy to the FBI for investigation, for arresting the jail commissioner or putting the jail commissioner in handcuffs. So, I mean, it's hard to find someone who is standing on the mountaintops and cheering for the behavior of Alfred Montgomery. That's not a popular position in the city right now. But does the mayor want to see? The mayor was one of the parties asked. So when the Holy Joe Society wrote a letter to the Attorney General, to Gabe Gore, the circuit attorney, and to the city councilor, they said, hey, someone needs to file this quo warranto, this impeachment proceeding with the courts. Will you do it? And we asked the mayor a week or two ago, do you intend to do that? Should the city do that? And she said, we're kind of taking a look at it. So she wasn't as eager or aggressive to pursue this as the Attorney General was. Maybe some of that is politics. Maybe she's happy to let the AG just do this on his own. We'll have to ask her that question soon.
And finally, what's the earliest he could officially be out of office?
I think the question is, how long could this take? As long as he digs in and fights this, I mean, the right to a speedy trial is the right of a defendant. So if they dig in and want to delay this, courts are probably prone to give him his day to prove his case. So I think the question is, how long might this last?
Good stuff, Mark. See you at the station later. Thanks so much for your time.
You bet. See ya.
All right, Mark Maxwell from 5 on Your Side doing another terrific job on the Sheriff Alfred Montgomery story.
He has done a great job covering the story this week, and we were lucky to get some more background information from him on the story. New understanding from Mark, per usual. His reporting is top-notch. Premier Heating and Cooling is also top-notch, and that's why I use them for all my heating and cooling needs these days. They've come out and checked both my heater, my furnace, as well as my air conditioning units, which are running quite efficiently and effectively, I might add, and much needed this particular week. If you have not had such good luck with your air conditioner unit, maybe there's a part of the house that it just doesn't keep up with, and you're noticing that there's big temperature differentials between one zone in your house versus another zone in your house. All those kinds of things require a professional to come in and really analyze the best way to make sure that you're getting more consistent cooling, so that wherever you're sleeping or living most of the days of your lives in your house, you have the best, most efficient cooling system you can have. And Premier Heating and Cooling understands that better than a lot of other people because they have the highest level of technical training, not just from the owners and the people at the top of the company, but they make sure their technicians are extraordinarily well trained as well. Reach out to them today at premierheatingcooling.net or 636 916 1122. That's Premier Heating and Cooling. Good stuff. Something we want you to remember is that the Salvation Army serves, even though we're exactly about 6 months away from Christmas time, it's not too soon to start thinking about the 6,500 kids in our area, some of the neediest kids in our area who would not probably get much Christmas otherwise, that thanks to the Salvation Army's Angel Tree program end up having a great Christmas every single year. And that's because of the support of our listeners in many ways. You guys do an incredible job every single year at stepping up to the plate and delivering and bringing to our toy drive so many unwrapped toys that go directly into the hands of kids who need it. And we know because of the tornadoes that we've been talking about, that need is going to be greater than ever in St. Louis. And that's why the Salvation Army has paired up with us and our friends at Westport to bring you a really fun series of events on July 11th and 18th. We're going to have a movie right out here in the courtyard at Westport. Giant screen, same size as the drive-in movie screen you knew from days past. But you can bring your family in, walk in, sit down, watch a movie, Finding Nemo week 1 on July 11th, Sandlot on July 18th. All you have to do is bring an unwrapped toy for the Christmas in July toy drive that we're partnering up to throw with the Salvation Army. And stay tuned. In the coming days and weeks, we'll tell you about other drop-off sites we'll have around the St. Louis area as well. So when you're out shopping this weekend, pick up that new unwrapped toy and keep it unwrapped, keep it in its packaging. And then we'll tell you how you can get a toy to some of our neediest neighbors this year for the holiday season.
And a little excitement coming to Enterprise on Friday night. This announcement has just happened. Nikki Glazer will reveal the St. Louis Blues first-round draft selection live at Enterprise on Friday evening.
That's fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
The Blues are doing a very good job. The hype machine over at Blues Nation is doing a very good job these days, aren't they?
Yes, they set me up with the great John Gruden yesterday. It's going to be a cool thing for season ticket holders on Friday night.
Did you put your request in, just for news gathering purposes, of getting one of the first sweaters when they get, with the new logo when they get done?
Not that, but I tell you something. John Gruden had one of the hats. Connor, you were right. The hats are already out, and they are good-looking lids. I wanted to take it right off of John and steal it. It's very nice. I bet they'll give them to all the season ticket holders on Fridays, too.
Oh, that'll be very, very fun. Lots
right.
more coming up in the show.
Yeah, we're excited because Greg Willard is going to join us when we come back. And we broke early because he's always good. We need extra time with Professor Greg Willard. Greg, great to be with you, sir. How are you?
Great to be with you.
All right, one of the hot stories nationally, Zohran Mamdani wins the primary for the mayor race in New York City. And there's no question he's charismatic and he's a great talker. And the vocal opposition will be, does he hate Israel? Does he really want to defund the police? Does he really want to abolish prisoners? And then I want you to react to this specifically. James Carville, who I find very compelling, says potentially very damaging for the Democratic Party. Your reaction to this?
Several pieces there. Let me break them apart quickly. First, as to James Carville's assessment, I think, as quite often is the case, he is spot on correct. It is potentially very damaging to the Democrats, and we have already seen why. It's sort of like bees to honey. The Democratic Party is sort of sliding and focusing on this young man and all. I guess I look at it from a slightly different perspective, and that is this. He is an avowed socialist. Free bus rides, rent frees, etc. In 2025, in the city of New York, the Democratic Party could not come up with a candidate to defeat him, but rather their chosen candidate was Mr. Cuomo, who had been run out of office for inappropriate conduct. And in a city of millions and millions of people, he was the best they could come up with. The fact that the answer is yes, apparently, tells, I think, our listeners all they need to know about the state of the Democratic Party in New York City, and I would suggest perhaps the Democratic Party writ large nationally, in the sense that when you hear critics of President Trump, as we have heard now going back to the escalator walk in 2015, and just this constant drumbeat that he's terrible, he's incompetent, he's awful. And in 2016, out of a country of 300 million people, the best the Democrats could come up with was Hillary Clinton. And in a country of 330 million people, the best the American people could come up with was an 80-plus-year-old gentleman who was exhibiting signs of early dementia. That's on the Democrats, Frank. That's not on President Trump and the Republicans, and I think that's what James Carville is getting to with his point that what we see in New York may be yet another microcosm of what we have seen before nationally with the Democratic Party writ large.
What about people, the national commentators, who are saying we aren't really a country of Democrats and Republicans anymore? We have the diehards in both parties, but we have this middle of the road, or not middle of the road at all. They're a voting block of people who will go to whoever they think is the disruptor and likely to bring change to them. Because, of course, many people who did vote for President Trump were not people who had identified previously as lifelong or traditional Republicans. Some lifelong traditional Republicans pulled away of that. So are we past the definition of where somebody kind of has that party affiliation for life?
Well, yes and no. We saw this movie in very similar fashion back in the late 60s and early 70s with the so-called silent majority, who cast aside their traditional political party shackles. Hard hats for Nixon. Many of our listeners will remember that. Well, that was revolutionary in terms of party affiliation and party alignment. We're seeing it again. I think the difference this time is that the triggers, if I can use that term, the triggers to compel voting blocks are much broader today than they were, say, 60 years ago with Nixon in that situation.
What about the approval ratings for the U.S. strike on Iran? Backed by Republicans, disapproval by Democrats. Where do you see it?
Ho-hum. it's another Thursday in mid-America, and the Democrats are criticizing a Republican president's unilateral use of military force. And turn the clock back, Frank and Jill, to the Truman presidency and go click, click, click every presidency since. You can just make book. 1 + 1 = 2. And when a Democratic president unilaterally exercised military power, the Republicans were outraged. Abuse of power, unconstitutional, da-da-da-da-da. And when it's the other way around, they line up exactly. The fact that we're hearing criticism from the Democrats on the left, my question to them simply were, where were you when President Obama, on several occasions, unilaterally launched military attacks? Where were you when President Clinton launched military attacks, committed forces in Kosovo? Well, I'll tell you where they were. They were graveyard silent. The proposition today, going back, we can go all the way back in our history books, that these so-called constitutional squabbles is a misnomer. They are not constitutional squabbles. They are political squabbles. We can go back into the early 19th century when Congressman Abraham Lincoln viciously opposed President Polk's unilateral use of force with the Mexican-American War. Mm-hmm. And Congressman Abe Lincoln was one of the biggest critics. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that President Lincoln was ill at heart in terms of the basis of his criticism. I think the point simply is when we hear and see the polls, Frank, on the critics' side, when they start waving the constitutional banner and what President Trump did Saturday night in Iran is unconstitutional, that's when I, as I said at the moment in answering your question, that's when I go ho-hum. It's just another day in American politics.
So help us understand just a little bit about presidential powers when it comes to taking military action and congressional powers. Who has what right to decide where troops do go in harm's way?
Well, it's intentionally fuzzy. And the reason I say it's intentionally fuzzy is that's what the framers of the Constitution back in 1788 intended to do. The president was given a power, one in this space. He is commander-in-chief of the military. So, in effect, he has 6 stars instead of a 5-star general. That's it. Congress, on the other hand, they were given the power to declare war, to raise and support the military, to make rules for the military, and most significantly, to fund it. The framers intended there to be a balance and a give and take, and for a lot of our history there was. For the first couple of centuries there was. What has happened since World War II is the wheels have come off of this back and forth. And what has happened since World War II is that presidents of both parties have taken our country to war unilaterally. The result, the framers would have expected, would have been for Congress to sort of shake off its constitutional sharp elbows and try to balance that the way the framers intended. Instead, what we have seen is what I just addressed in my colloquy with Frank. What we have seen is those constitutional powers of the Congress have given way to their partisan loyalty. So if it's a Republican exercising unilateral war powers, the Republicans in Congress, hooray, hooray, hooray. But if it's a Democrat, they suddenly wave the constitutional banner. This is unconstitutional. A couple of Democratic congressmen have already introduced bills to have President Trump impeached. Again, where were they when President Biden, President Obama, President Clinton, President Carter, where were those same congressional representatives when those Democratic presidents exercised unilateral war-making power? Hint, hint, they were on the sidelines, crickets at most, and more likely championing the actions of their.
So just political
Yeah.
drama.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. If, let's say we don't have American soldiers dying from this, let's say we don't get involved in a prolonged war and a regime change, and we don't get skyrocketing oil prices, do you think that even the opposition to Trump would say, okay, that was a great Saturday night. That was a good thing because Iran no longer has nuclear capability. If these things don't happen, will this be like an 80-20 thing? That was a good thing?
No, I don't think so, because I think, and back to your question about the political scene today, Jill, I think it doesn't matter
Really?
whether it
No
was
matter what.
whether it was successful or not successful. The Democrats are going to continue to throw mud at President Trump's unilateral use of military force, just
Like
like
the
the
Republicans
Republicans
would,
did
yeah.
when President Obama did it, Frank. So I don't think we're going to hear this. Well, you know what? Gosh, I think in retrospect, Donald Trump did a really good thing.
Although Fetterman's on record as saying that he approved what happened.
Well,
and he's a really pro-Israel guy.
Yeah, but I think he's a pro-Israel guy. But in terms of the Democratic sphere today, John Fetterman is a unicorn. Period.
Yeah.
Full stop.
Oh, well, we got a great text here. They act like children, both parties. That's a perfect text.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Joe.
well put by our terrific texters.
Yeah.
Getting back to some legal questions, I think this term that Andrew Bailey used yesterday, the effort, which I'm forgetting now because it didn't roll off my tongue.
Quo warranto.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I'll have to memorize that. Quo warranto, that he is using to try to get our current sheriff in the city of St. Louis, Alfred Montgomery, ousted. Is that commonly used in situations like this? I know it was in the Kim Gardner case as well.
Well, terrific question, and let me at least drop a little drop of what I hope is calm into the cauldron this morning. On the one hand, when an attorney general seeks a writ of quo warranto, that is about an ultimate undemocracy step in our society. That you have an executive branch official is trying to have an elected official kicked out of office. Okay, I get that. On the other hand, in Missouri and in other states, but in Missouri, Jill, we have had writs of quo warranto issued for decades and decades and decades. It is not unusual in that sense that one of the most interesting reading is then Attorney General Jack Danforth obtained a writ of quo warranto against the sheriff outstate who was doing some, shall we say, untoward things. Attorney General John Ashcroft, I think in the early 1980s, did the same thing. But we can go in our history books. Sadly, it happens more often than we would like, but let's be very clear. It's not an abuse of power for Attorney General Bailey to be seeking the writ. He's filed the papers with the court. It will be up to the court. The city sheriff can put on his evidence, and the judge will decide. But I want our listeners to understand that this is not a one-off. These writs of quo warranto have gone on for many, many years, sadly, and we'll see where this one comes out. The sheriff will have his day in court. But if you read the papers that the Attorney General filed, if you believe them on their face, if I were at the betting window, I would not bet a win place or a show ticket on the sheriff. He's going to have some splaining to do.
Yeah, and will it be Gabe Gore ultimately prosecuting him?
Well, if criminal charges are brought, which is a separate, that would
Which
be a
is likely
separate path.
too, though, right? At this point,
Could be.
Yeah.
It could be. And I think Gabe, my former colleague and good friend Gabe, will have to make that assessment. But I think for this purpose, the remedy is not a criminal sentence or prosecution. What Attorney General Bailey is seeking is a writ, which is a fancy lawyer name for a court order. It is a writ dispossessing and kicking the sheriff out of office. And that's it. That's the only thing that is the proposed remedy in this lawsuit filed by Attorney General Bailey yesterday.
Very
you're the
good
best at what
stuff.
you do. We only get great responses when you're on the air. We really appreciate it.
Yeah,
sir.
we posted it on social media that you're going to be on today, and I got a couple of can't wait to hear Professor Willard. So
Great
thank
to be
you.
with both of you, and Connor, stay safe.
Altair Travel and Cruises is somebody else that we look forward to talking to because they always have the best ideas on fun trips to interesting places. Ones you may have seen in a favorite TV show, White Lotus, for instance, made some popular destinations to tropical venues. And there's all kinds of reasons that you have a place on your mind that you've said, I always want to go there. And when you get to actually planning the trip or thinking about how to make it happen or how much it might cost, all those things start to get jumbled in your head. And what happens is another year goes by and you haven't taken the trip. 2025 should be the year that you say, life is short. Let's take the trip. Let's do the things that we create the memories with our family, with our grandkids, with our spouse, with the people we love and care about. And you can do that by reaching out to our friends at altairtravel.com or give them a call, 314-968-9600. That's Altair Travel and Cruises.
The Bommarito Automotive Group is Missouri's #1 automotive group. They've sold over 1 million vehicles by giving you a better price, a better selection, and more for your trade. You can shop them online, see their entire inventory of over 12,000 vehicles online today at bommarito.com.
Welcome back, everybody.
Yeah.
We pride ourselves on having some experts outstanding in their field on the show to answer the questions that you couldn't get answered anywhere else. Ryan Raphael, the Medicare man, is certainly that. We asked you guys at the beginning of the show if you had questions for the Medicare man today, and boy, you came in with many of them. Somebody asking the question, my dad let his Medigap policy lapse. Now he just has Medicare alone. Is it too late for him to get an Advantage plan now?
In most cases, yes, but there actually is a couple of options that people with certain chronic health conditions have some options. Sometimes people that are lower income. So I would just say that they're welcome to reach out, and I will see if there's any options that can solve the problem.
Okay, so it is the kind of thing where if you do let it lapse, you really need to think about that before you let it happen.
Yeah, but it happens with seniors. I mean, for one reason or another. But I get it, and I've seen it happen on many occasions. But fortunately, we may have an option or two. If not, they may have to wait for the enrollment period. But, maybe if they want to do another Medigap policy, we can talk about that.
Brief interruption. Connor played the music. You just got back from the concert with John Carney. Can
I
you
did.
describe it?
Describe my experience with John Carney or the concert?
Both.
Both were great. Yeah, we had a blast. He was really fun to hang out with, and we saw an amazing Rush cover band. And they just
Really?
they're a national act versus we have some local guys that do it, and it was at the Factory, which is an amazing place to see a concert. It was fantastic. I mean, they played the music to a T. When a cover band just destroys, and I say destroys, that's my terminology of playing it perfectly, and this band did just that.
Good to hear.
That's right. It's that terminology we learn from our kids, right? Which is the opposite of what it sounds like we're
Right.
saying. I get that. Somebody would like to know about dental plans. How do you know about the best dental supplement if you need that in a Medicare plan?
So Medicare does not have dental insurance themselves, but certain plans do. But the ones that need that, I always tell people, ask your dentist, maybe see what plans they take first before I would say, like, hey, here's a couple options to consider. There's decent ones out there. They're not incredible. They don't blow doors. We're covering everything. But I think that would be a good start. Ask your dentist and see.
Another question here. Medicare eliminated the so-called donut hole, and prescription drug costs were capped at $2,000. That saves seniors a lot who take expensive prescription drugs. Do you think this will continue, or do you think this will change in the future?
Great question. I think it'll definitely continue on. Excuse me. So, I mean, that's been written into law. I mean, that was, I don't think that is going anywhere. And yes, it has been a dramatic savings for seniors having a cap on what they can spend. Before it was pretty substantial, but now that there is that $2,000 cap on what a person can pay on drugs has been life-changing for so many people.
So people have expressed concern about Medicare if the big, beautiful bill passes. I don't know how well you've studied it or how often you study it. Do you think there's going to be an effect there?
I have not studied it enough to be able to comment on it, Frank, because I just don't want to give misinformation about it. But the things that I hear in my industry, a lot of talks will happen about how Medicare will get affected, and then lo and behold, it does not, and so I don't want to say that and then it does,
Yeah.
But, really, I think I would feel comfortable staying out of the
Sure.
out of that type of stuff.
Okay,
Yeah.
we have another question about somebody saying, if my loved one goes into a nursing home, do they still need a Medicare supplement plan of any kind? And does it still is it still active if that happens?
Right. Well, in most cases, that person does not, because usually if they go into the actual nursing home and it's not like a rehab center where they're recovering, but they're going there to maybe reside there, most of the time they don't. However, some nursing homes, people see doctors outside of the nursing home, and maybe they need some sort of coverage to be able to do that. Although most people who move in there, they're usually there to stay. But I would say in most cases, the person does not need that anymore.
Somebody else saying, please tell these experts that you have outstanding in their field they should come inside. It's a little too hot out.
Yes, it's very hot. I was actually outside for a commitment I had yesterday, and it was outside, and it was very hot.
Do you golf in this weather?
That's what it was. I did, it was just something I had planned with friends. We had it planned for over a month, and it was just the day that we were all available. And we went in the morning, so the first couple hours was not that bad. But boy, when that afternoon hit, whew.
Well, you're a hockey guy, so you're used to being able to put on the layers and get yourself comfortable in very chilly temperatures.
Yes.
So you'd prefer that over this?
Yeah, I would say so. And we were actually talking about that too. Like a nice cold hockey rink sounds really good.
Yeah. Now, are you a season ticket holder?
I'm actually a half season ticket holder, so
does
yeah, I'm
that
there pretty often.
qualify for Friday night's draft? I think they're inviting season ticket
You know
holders.
what? I don't know because I'm not in charge of the group.
Okay.
I used to be in charge of my group, but the guy that's in charge, maybe he hasn't told us, or I don't. Maybe a half season does not get offered that.
And you love the new uniforms, I imagine, right?
It's okay.
Oh,
It's
you don't
grown.
like
I mean,
it?
yeah. I mean, I know a lot of people love it. I know it's the old school emblem. But I just like the new one that we've had, the royal blue and
Okay.
just the. But again, I understand what they're doing, and there's some neat stuff about it. Yeah.
Okay, Ryan Raphael, Medicare Man. You can call him on his cell phone, 314-368-6808 or MedicareMan, STL.com. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, that'll do it for this edition of the program. We appreciate everybody being a part of it. We will take a break, a 22-hour one coming up next. John Carney and Julie Buck.